Okay, let's get started. I am going to record this just so I can send it out to people who weren't able to make it today, but welcome. This is our week 3 of our 4-week course, Relax, Focus, De-Stress, and Connect. So we're focusing on stress this week. And I hope you'll find some of this helpful. I know some of it you probably have heard before, but in any event, we can always get better at coping with stress, right? So first of all, let me tell you that just again, tell you a little bit about the program itself. Employee and Family Resources is a great way to cope with stress, whether it's through finding resources or getting some direct one-to-one counseling or a legal and financial consultation. And the website, the Achieve Solutions website, has lots of good information. So if you want to start the process, you can either give a call to the toll-free number, it's answered 24/7, or for online appointments, you can go to the mybeaconwellbeing.com link here, and I will send these slides out so you have them. And but if you go to the Achieve Solutions, that's really where a lot of the content is. But there's a link to that other one as well. So either way, you can be able to get assistance through either of the websites. So just to remind you about the kits, and there's actually, as you can see, the different life event kits. Everything from having a new baby to will preparation, everything in between. And there is a stress management kit. And so in the stress management kit are a couple of very good books, The End of Stress, and then one on MBSR, that's mindfulness-based stress reduction. A couple of good books, and then a nature mood CD and an adult coloring book and colored pencils. So, and then I added one on caregiver support just so you could see what's included in that as well. But going back, you'll see there's a list of the whole bunch of them. So you can get one of those during the course of a year. We limit it to one because we do have a limited number. But there are still kits available at the end of the year here. So if you want one, just give a call and they will send it right to you. So that's the stress management kit and the caregiver kit. And so let's kind of get into what is stress. So first couple of definitions: when the demands of a situation outweigh our ability and resources to handle it, which I think we can all sort of relate to these days. We kind of seem to have too much on our plate and not enough time to do things, and we're kind of running in a state of time poverty. But also another way to think about it, Kelly McGonigal is a health psychologist, and she says stress is when anything that matters to you is threatened. So anything that's important to you, anything that's important in your life is threatened, or you're concerned about, that causes stress. So those are a couple of quick definitions. And how to get better at stress. And really that's kind of the point of today's session, is the fact that we can learn to get better at stress. It's not easy because sometimes stress overwhelms us and just seems like we're swimming, against the tide. But I think if we learn to, the main thing is to kind of learn to change our relationship to stress so that we kind of put it in proper perspective. And one of the ways to do that is to realize that stressors, this statement here, stressors are the events, people, or situations that cause you stress. And the first thing to say to that is phooey. They don't really cause us stress. They may be triggers to our stress. Yes, I'll give you that much. But The things that mostly cause us stress are ourselves. It's the way we interpret it. And because of, we tend to be sort of egocentric, and these things here, lots of pressure, always on, too many distractions. It sort of feels like it's all coming down on us, and that's kind of why we sort of get that way about it. But if we can realize that we have a certain amount of control, we have control over how we respond to the stress. That's really the key. The stress itself may be ongoing, and it may be things that feel like they're out of our control. And so we have to kind of like put it into perspective. And it really depends on kind of what we believe about stress. So just to kind of go through these really quickly, we all feel a lot of pressure, I think, that we're always on. And in these days, we have way too many distractions and way too much information. So part of that means that we can control the input into the amount of distractions we have. We can control what we put our attention on and what we focus on. In fact, if you remember last week, we did, the whole class was on focus. And that's really the whole idea of that, is to control our focus to the degree that we have the ability to kind of focus in on what we need to focus in on. Way too much information in our, through our phones and our other devices. And VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that's kind of really exactly what we've been through in the past couple of years. And those things all make our stress worse, or they also erode our attention. They erode our ability to focus. So those are going to be fighting against us. And then if you work with patients, of course, it's natural. We're human. We get emotionally involved with patients, and we get caught up in their stories. And we're obviously, as caretakers, we're very concerned for our patients, and we have compassion for them. That usually means that we feel that, we take it on, we absorb some of that compassion. And that's what compassion fatigue is about. If we allow that to kind of get to us over a period of time, it erodes our ability to stay in a compassionate mindset. And also with secondary trauma, that means that when people are going through trauma that we're serving, we can sometimes feel that, we pick that up. Yes, thank you. The U in uncertainty is, the U in VUCA is uncertainty. Okay, so moving on, one place to start is to assess your stress. Now, there are a bunch of quizzes, as you can see here, on our Achieve Solutions. This is on our EFR website that I pointed out. If you go to the home page on that, you'll see right on the scrolling banner across the top, health assessments for your well-being. And if you click into that, you'll see the whole range of them. There's about 20 or 30 of them, but I listed just a few of them here that are related to stress, so that some that you might want to take. And we do have the perceived stress scale, which if some of you may have taken from my classes before. If you want that again, I'm happy to send that to you. It's a self scoring, easily, it's like 12 items. It's easy to take and get your own score, and it's validated, and you can kind of compare yourself to other people who have taken that. Yes, thank you. I see you're putting those in there. Appreciate that. And so you may want to take some of the other ones, but for today, you can simply rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. And what I would encourage you to do, so 1 being no stress whatsoever, 10 being, an overload of stress, way too much stress, chronic stress, ongoing stress. Where are you now? Maybe the last few days to a week. Where would you rate yourself on that scale? And now, after today's session, and after each session, we kind of have some homework and some things to try. What I would suggest is that you try a few things over the next week or so, and then rate yourself again and see where you stand next week. And then the week after, maybe build that into your weekly practice and kind of see how your stress goes up and down, and see how you can really have a little bit more control over some of that. But that's the idea, is to be able to have some control, not let it get out of control. The other way to look at it is in this continuum. So most of us are probably in the yellow zone a lot of the time. And if you look down in the yellow, mild or transient distress, low risk, causes can be any stressor. We feel irritable, anxious, loss of motivation, focus, maybe some difficulty sleeping, muscle tension, not having fun. Now, we want to be in the green zone. Green is, as you can see, optimal functioning, really more of a state of well-being. But I think realistically, really most of us are somewheres, moving into the yellow. And what we want to do, obviously, is keep out of the orange and the red, because if you just glance at some of these are definitely more of the high scale. Like if you rated 10, 8 to 10, for example, might be considered in the orange or the red. And it's pretty serious stuff. So orange, more severe, persistent distress, leaves a scar, higher risk, more wear and tear, loss of control, perhaps some panic or depression, guilt or shame. And then the red, as you can see, is really the worst. So we're talking about more clinical depression, anxiety, substance abuse, those kinds of things, long-term symptoms over time, really a lot more difficult to control. So clear that we can have more control over these kinds of things in the green or the yellow zone. And think of it in a preventative or proactive way, ways to kind of keep us out of the orange and the red. So how do you do that? Well, I think of it this way. Let's break it down into a daily basis. This might be a typical day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Lots of stressors. We often have each of these peaks is a stress response, and each upward climb there is a stressor. We start off kind of maybe on an even keel, and so if we have multiple stressors in a day, it can get to feel pretty overwhelming, right? And we can feel like stressed out. We can feel anxious. We can feel tense. All the, there's physical, there's emotional, there's cognitive results of our stress. But the point here is that if we look at each one individually, when a stressor happens, it gives us kind of a push upwards, kind of a flight or flight response up into the distressed range here, right? And we might feel some muscle tension or a headache or some stomach distress or whatever it is. And what it's helpful to do is to kind of notice for yourself, what are some of the early warning signs that let you know when you're under stress? Sometimes we're so used to it, we're not aware of it. So what are some of the things that let you know that you're feeling that stress? Maybe it's some irritability, or maybe it's some disorganized thinking, or, scattered thoughts, or, emotional ups and downs, or maybe you feel it in the body, perhaps in stomach distress or back pain or neck pain or headache, something like that. So when you feel that, when you begin to feel that, you want to do something to counteract that. And that's really the trick. So something to bring on the relaxation response. And if you can learn to kind of get in the habit of every time there's an upward spike, we can do something to bring on the relaxation response that brings us down at least to the normal baseline level, preferably below into what we would call the relaxation response. That's a great way to, just as the day goes on, to try different things. The trick is to do them. Okay, so what do we do? Well, I know you've seen this before. Many of you have seen this in my classes, but we have to intentionally take a pause, intentionally do something to counteract the effects of the stressor. A pause can be anything that kind of helps us change gears psychologically. It can be something to help us sort of reset our mindset, or reset how we're feeling. So, whatever it is, but intentionally, and a pause can be as brief as 10 seconds or up to, say, 2 or 3 minutes. Longer if you have it. But I mean, that's really all it's needed, up to a couple of minutes. And just to give you some ideas of taking some pauses, think about what you do when you take a break. And hopefully you're taking some breaks, but love to hear what you do right now. And if you want to speak up, you can speak up, or you can use the chat feature. What are some things that you do right now that are helpful to taking what I would call a real break? A real break is something that helps you detach from the stress of the moment, something that is where you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by the work that you're doing, but something that really helps you disengage and decompress a little bit. So any suggestions? What do you do right now to help you do that? If you want to share that in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Now, a lot of people, thank you. I see some things here. Great, excellent. Take a walk. So a couple of walks. Hopefully you continue to do that, no matter what the weather is. Eat my lunch in privacy without a phone. Excellent. I love that. Yeah, do something to control your environment so you're not being intruded upon. I pause and listen to my most favorite artists. Music soothes me deeply. Very good. Music, anything that really soothes you. That's the key word there. Leave my desk to clear my mind. These are great. So good. You're doing these, and I hope what you're doing is doing these with regularity, and doing them if you can as soon as possible after you feel the stressor. Walk in nature, express gratitude. Yeah, that's a good one. Gratitude is an excellent one. Deep conscious breaths when I feel muscle tension. Very good. Breathing, thank you. Breathing is, as we know, foundation of all these things. I like to take a walk outside or move to another room, if indoors, away from the stressor. Yeah, take control of your environment. It can really make a difference to take control of what's going on and give you a sense of agency. So thank you for those suggestions. What happens sometimes is we go through lunch, we go through our snacks or coffee breaks, and we're still obsessing and we're still stressing. So that's the key, is if you're still feeling kind of overwhelmed, and sometimes I know it's hard to kind of fight against that tide, but taking those routine breaks are really, really important. And to do those practices that you all mentioned are really important. So making them a habit. So if you do them ahead of time, you're practicing that muscle of relaxation and soothing yourself, so that when a big stressor comes along, you've got that kind of at your fingertips. As you can see, a lot of you said taking a walk outside if possible. Nature is a great one. Any kind of movement, basically whatever gives you some energy, and avoid whatever drains it. The last point here is really just to kind of point out that sometimes we get down on ourselves and we don't give ourselves a break. We can be our own worst critic. So think about that. If that's something that's sort of getting into yourself into trouble, do something to give yourself some slack and to give yourself some compassion. We could really do a whole class on that, but self-compassion has been found to be one of the most powerful ways, and even more stronger than self-esteem in terms of self-improvement, but just not getting down on ourselves, just being kind to ourselves, the same that we would with a good friend or a family member, treating ourselves the same way we would treat them to kind of help them. Here are some quick purposeful pauses just to consider. A couple of you mentioned deep, conscious, deep breaths. Breathing in, exhaling with a sigh and holding. So it's breathing in deep. And then that kind of a sigh, hold it for a bit, and then repeating that cycle. The 3 conscious deep breaths, at least 3 is important. Use your belly to breathe deep and make your exhale longer than your inhale. Those are some good tips for deep breathing. Stop, sense, and appreciate and go. Simply, be aware of when something pleasant happens. And when that happens, pause, let it sink in, give yourself a little bit of time to appreciate it and, feel it, let it absorb in a sense, and then move on. But give yourself at least 10, 20, that's all it really takes, 10 to 30 seconds to spend some time with that pleasant event, and that can make a difference. Quick relaxation techniques. So you mentioned a lot of those already, but one that works quite well is visualizing. So, imagine in a peaceful place. You can do this as we talk right now. Imagine a nice, peaceful, calm place, and put yourself there. Close your eyes and imagine yourself taking a little getaway. What do you see? What do you hear? Use your senses in your imagination to kind of like really go there. And just take 2, 3, 5 minutes if you can and escape. It's a great way to use visualization. 3 breaths for a pause. I've taught this before, but very simply, it's a deep breath and feel the breath. In and out. It's a deep breath again. This time, feel the body. Anchor yourself in the body. Feel what the body needs. Take care of the body. Release tension if you need to. And then a 3rd deep breath, and remember to be kind to yourself. So the 3rd deep breath is all about taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself. So that's 3 breaths for a pause. So with this quote, rest and self-care are so important. When you take time to replenish your spirit, it allows you to serve from the overflow. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. And it's really the concept that when we take time to fill up our own well, when we take time to consistently put into, like all those things that you mentioned before, when you do those on a regular basis, you're replenishing your own reserves, right? And you're able to, it's that old thing of when you need to put your oxygen mask on and you're in an airplane, put your oxygen mask on first so that you can help somebody else. It's the same kind of concept, that when you taking the time to replenish yourself so that you have enough to give from in order to take care of others in your life. So important concept there. Now there's obvious stuff. We know that exercise on a regular basis, especially vigorous exercise, aerobic exercise, sweat producing exercise, or any kind of movement that gives you joy. It might be dancing, or there's all kinds of different movement that can be helpful. That can be very, very good for stress. Eating well, of course, eating good, nutritious meals, sleeping, sleep is probably one of the most important things. So I include a link in here. If you have kind of an anxious mind and you're trying to get to sleep and your mind is racing, this has got some tips on that. Limit habits that don't help in the long run. So, just kind of analyzing what are the things that you do. I mean, we all, I think, have learned in very good ways to go home and veg out in front of Netflix, and our streaming it's good in a way. I mean, it's really, I'm not saying not to do that at all, but look at the complete realm of the habits that you do, and see that you balance them. See that you have some good downtime, some good reading time, some good rest time, some good perhaps meditation time, some good time with people. But make those habits balanced as best you can. And then if you don't know about Living Well Cares, you can get health coaching. They do have health coaches at each of the delivery networks. So if you need help finding who those people are, just let me know. I can put you in touch, or you can reach out to Nicole Larissa. She's the supervisor of that team, and she can connect you with one of the health coaches. And they actually will meet with you one-to-one, and you can set some goals up, and helps with accountability towards reaching those goals. All right, so let's pause at this point and let's do a meditation. Let's do a stress-related meditation. And for this one, I'm going to do one that's based on, this is one that I actually used I don't know if any of you were in the anxiety class, but it's similar, because stress and anxiety are quite similar. But let's take a few moments and just, before we close our eyes, let's sit first in a posture that's upright and alert and easy. And with your eyes open, turn your head to the side. Take a breath in. So breathing in, and then as you turn your head to the other side, breathe out all the way over. And then breathe in, turn your head to the other side. And do that a couple times, and use your visual field to just anchor you in the present moment. This is a great way to kind of just really be in touch with what's right in front of you. And then you can bring your bring your face to the center and pause and lift the chin up just a bit to notice what's up in front of you, or above you rather. Breathing nice and easily, and then coming back down, and just expand your awareness to notice what's around you, and to be aware of the space around you. So that's using our visual field to kind of ground us and center us. There's lots of ways to do that, but that's one good way to do that. And then when you're ready, you can let your eyes close, or you can let them almost close if you prefer to keep them slightly open. Either way is fine. And now we're going to find an anchor in the body or the breath. So as we ease into the practice, find your anchor, that place in your body where you feel a sense of ease. The anchor can be found by feeling into the stillness, the density, and the solidity of your body resting where you're sitting. Feel that anchored sense. And the anchor can also be found by feeling into the stillness. Sorry, I just said that. The anchor can also be found by feeling the expansion and contraction of the breath breathing itself. If it helps, you can put a hand just below the belly button and let yourself breathe naturally and fully into this area. And just allow the gentle rhythm of the breath to quiet the nervous system. Now, having allowed ourselves to settle and relax, bring to mind something that's mildly or moderately stressful. And if you prefer, you can just stay focused on your anchor. That's perfectly fine. But if it feels okay, tune into this stress or anxiety situation and take a moment and simply notice what arises. What thoughts come up? What are you saying to yourself about this situation? There's no right or wrong, but just really noticing sometimes we tend to catastrophize a situation with our thoughts. We make it bigger than it is. And that usually leads to exaggerated feelings. So, what feelings are present? In the same way that we notice thoughts, be aware of feelings that arise. And we're just noticing now, you don't have to change or fix anything. See if you can just allow the feelings to be there. And see if you can notice where you feel it in the body. Bring your awareness down into the body, out of your mind, and see if you can notice where this stress expresses itself. Maybe some tightness in the chest, or agitation in the belly, or tension in the shoulders, the back, or the jaw. Just noticing, see if you can stay with it a bit, and even see if you can stand back from it a bit. Give it some space. And as you observe it and are curious about it, see if it changes. Does it stay the same or get worse or better? Now, feel free to breathe into that area, diffusing it, and then breathing it out, kind of expelling it on the out breath. So breathe in, allowing the in-breath to diffuse it, and breathe out, expelling it as you breathe out. And offer yourself some comfort or care the way you would to a good friend. You know, what message might be most comforting? What does your anxious self most need to hear? Might be something like, it's okay. This too will pass. Or, I'm fine in this moment. Or, I've been through this before and I can handle it. But we're really just slowing down and allowing ourselves to feel it a bit and realize that we have some control over it. It may be helpful to place your hand on your heart or some physical gesture of kindness to the vulnerability inside you. Continuing to breathe nice and easily, we realize that being able to see the pieces of things that bring up our stress can allow us to challenge the distortions of the mind and being able to see the story that comes up. Sometimes we get lost in the story that the mind creates. Stepping back from it allows us to see it a little bit more clearly. Allows us to ask ourselves the question, is it true? This practice of getting curious of what makes up our experience can really support us in seeing things right-sized when the mind wants to make something bigger than it is. You're practicing being able to know when your stress is rising in your body, to pause, to turn towards it with curiosity, and ask yourself, is this really true? Does it need to be attended to right now? Is it urgent? Or can I watch it arise and pass away on its own? Sometimes it will do that. Now, when you're ready, you can deepen your breath again. Be aware of where there is contact between the body and the chair. And begin to slowly open the eyes if they were closed, perhaps looking around the environment, anchoring yourself with the visual field again, orienting yourself to your space. And I hope this practice has been helpful to you. And please begin to challenge your inner narratives by opening all your senses to see what is true. Now, what if some anxious or stressful thoughts return? Well, you can trust that each time you pause and go through this process, you're deconditioning your tendency to worry or stress. It takes time and practice, but the outcome can be life-giving, and it frees up huge amounts of energy. So remember those spikes in the chart that I showed you. Do something to counteract and to bring on the relaxation response whenever those things happen. All right, so basically what we're doing is learning to be present. With mindfulness, we can learn to relax and calm ourselves. That's a huge benefit. Purposeful pauses can help us step out of autopilot. When we're on autopilot, our mind is kind of like running on its own. And we're really kind of in a way not in control at that point. But some of the other benefits are we can really increase our focus and concentration. We can improve our compassion and connection as well. So these are some benefits of our mindful practices. And I know you've seen this before, but it's just, to me, illustrates easily that when we're mindful, when we're on autopilot, the mind becomes full of all the worries, concerns, and stresses that are going on. They just sort of take over. When we're mindful, like the dog, we are paying attention to what's going on right here, right now. We're not letting the mind travel off. And that's really what it's doing. It's time traveling. It's rewinding to the past. It's kind of worrying about things that have happened replaying things that have happened, or it's projecting and fast forwarding to the future. And often we're worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. So take some time to just kind of re-ground yourself, recenter yourself with some of these kinds of techniques, and that can be helpful. Now, this cat yoga is another way to do that. Any sort of gentle stretches. You don't always have to be sitting, closing your eyes, doing a meditation. You can bring mindful awareness to any kind of movement. Again, like I said, whether it be dance or stair climbing or exercise or gentle stretching, gentle yoga. But the point is when you're doing stretches with the body, you're bringing yourself out of your head and into the body. So first of all, that's the body's always in the present. So bringing your awareness into the body is step number one. And then staying with that and following, keeping your attention on the body itself, on the movements, on the slight stretching, on the feelings of the body, even if they're not all that pleasant. Sometimes we can focus a little bit on, a little bit of the discomfort, noticing before we automatically, because we tend to automatically push away discomfort and unpleasantness, but just sort of being present with whatever is in the moment can help us immensely. So give that a try too. That's another easy technique that you can try. The mind does get in the way, and so this quote, we are not troubled by things, but by the opinions we have about things. So what we're learning to do is we're learning to change our relationship to the stress by looking at the way we think about it. And if we think about it in certain ways, and if we think about it, so for example, if we're thinking this is awful, this is terrible, well, of course, that will be how it'll play out. But if we realize, and we could think about it just as it is and try to accept things as they are, we realize that we have more control over things by our response to things, by the way that we perceive them and by the way the things that we believe about them and how we respond to them. That's the power of these kinds of techniques. Mark Twain said it well, my life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. And really, we can not have to go there. If we kind of let it get it out of control, this is what it feels like. It just gets to be kind of overwhelming and burdensome and troubling. But we could take these really in a preventative way. We can not allow these to pile up this way. So this is the last thing that I'll tell you about this. And this is really where the beauty of managing stress in our lives. When you get this, you may have seen this if you've been in some of my classes before, but I showed this study that Kelly McGonigal talks about, how to make stress your friend. Basically, it all really comes down to the fact that we have control over what we tell ourselves. And if we are telling ourselves that the stress is terrible and awful, it will actually have an effect on our body. And what she talks about in this study is that when they taught people to get better at stress, and that's really what we're talking about. We're learning ways to get better at stress that arises in our lives. When we can get better at stress, we can get better day by day, and like with each event, in processing that stress, instead of it becoming overwhelming, instead of it becoming to the point where it's actually beginning to affect us physically, we can learn to really respond to it rather than automatically react to it. And what they found in the study is that when people learn to get better at stress, when they just learn simple little techniques like we're talking about today, they had a better cardiovascular profile. They had a lower risk of dying because they followed this group for over 8 years. So it really can make a profound difference in how we how stress impacts our mental and physical being. So there's a couple of other links there that once I send the slides out, you might want to take a look at these, but there are also ways to kind of harness the power of your stress and to realize that, most stress is really not that harmful to us. Most of the stress in our lives we can manage, and the better that we get at the kind of the smaller, more manageable stressors, the better we'll be at the larger stress-related events. The one thing I haven't mentioned, which is probably one of the most important strategies, is our support systems. So whether we use our coworkers, our support groups at work, or family and friends at home, that we really actively do things in a way that helps offload the stress with other people. And that's that's also been shown in studies to be very effective. So think about that strategically. Who are you going to use to be with, to share some of the stress with, and then when you do that, like the last point there, strategic support groups is really all about not just focusing in on the stress. It's one thing to vent, and that can be very helpful. It can be immensely helpful just to kind of get together, and that's what support groups can be all about, is talking about the shared experience that we go through with stress, right? But the more important part of it is then finding what are some positive solutions. What are some things that we have control over in the situation? And if we don't have much control over, then how can we change our own way of responding to it? So the whole point of it is trying to come up with those specific ways that we do have control. And then there's building a positive mindset. And basically this comes down to the fact that, we already have a negativity bias in our brains. Just through years of evolution, we're kind of hardwired this way. It's been our way of helping us survive over thousands of years. So we have sort of an automatic leaning towards the negative side. So if you sort of feel like that's happening, we need to make sure we do some things specifically in a targeted way to build a positive mindset. And that's simply, gratitude is one of the best things you can do, to specifically write some things down, to focus in on things that we feel grateful for. This quote kind of says it all. It's not happiness that makes us grateful, but gratefulness that makes us happy. There's a couple of other good links there. Oops. Some very good little videos there if you want to watch that. But to do some specific things during the day, to take note of the positive things that happen, the things that you're grateful for, to record them if you have a chance to record them, to share them with somebody. There's some apps. There's a good app called 365 Gratitude that does give you daily prompts. But so making it a habit, like anything else, that's really what I'm talking about. And then some other resources to support your practice. I've mentioned this many times before, but our website, the Achieve Solutions site, has guided meditations on there. There are the assessments that I mentioned, all kinds of articles and webinars. There's some very good apps, Insight Timer and 10% Happier. Healthy Minds is another one. I've got a lot of the classes on YouTube, and you'll find things on there. And And then the phone meditations. Some of you may know about these. Hopefully you'll consider joining. There's always room. These are 10-minute meditations. They're live at these particular times. You call into this from a phone. That's all you need to do. Call in, put in the access code, and then just listen. It's really that simple. I try to come up with a different theme during the week and different topics for the meditation, so you get a little bit of a different focus each day. And then there are 3 pre-recorded ones on this website as well. But so just to give you some different places for those. So I ask at this point, what are some baby steps? What are some things that you might do going forward? Try to come up, maybe share them with somebody, maybe have a buddy to do these with. But small, simple little things to try for the next couple of weeks. What are some things that perhaps that I said that you might like to try? All right, so a couple of comments here. Thank you. Appreciate your thanks, and grateful to you all for being here too. Yes, I still do have to share the slides for the anxiety class. If you were in that class last week, I will still share those. Those will be coming out. I will share these as well to all the folks that have signed up for these. I've got the list through LMS, through the roster. So I will be sending these out. And thank you very much for being here today. Any questions or comments before I let you go? Yes, the anxiety class was the same each week. It was just the one same class that we repeated 4 different times. The name of the gratitude app is I think it's 365 gratitude or gratitude 365. But if you just put that into your search, you'll find that. Okay, well, thank you all very much. And let me know if you have any questions at this point before I let you go. Thanks for joining me today, and nice to see your friendly faces again, and hope you have a great rest of your day, and let me know if I can help in any way. Take good care.
Thank you, Barb. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Thanks.